And the guides and the clients have made about 80 runs total by 2:30 p.m. And they were skiing all of these gullies. And at 2:30, one of the group returned to the base. I think some of the clients were tired or something. And the other three groups were on the north end of the ridge, and that's that end. One group was, they were actually skiing that chute. One group was near the top of the ridge, and the other two were on a counter ridge, which is that ridge, at 2775, which is someplace right around there, and at 2590, I don't know, down in there someplace. So the guide that was at was kind of in the middle at 2,700 meters. Crossed it, went into the gully, skied off the counter ridge into the gully, crossed thin section of snowpack, and entered this adjoining chute. And he had gone, totally out of sight of his group when he was engulfed in a large avalanche. And this is where I think it gets interesting. Is the avalanche fractured on the December weak layer, the buried surface ore layer. It measured about 600 meters wide and about 800 meters long. Ground faces from 30 centimeters to 150 centimeters on slope angles that varied from 28 to 38 degrees. So that's a photo, not a very good one, I took from the helicopter the next day, but essentially everything avalanched up and over the counter ridges, and the gullies slid all the way down into this creek. The counter ridges didn't tend to, but the whole mountain essentially slid or avalanched. So the helicopter was down in the creek. It was in a pickup zone near the North Chute. And the pilot, the helicopter was off. He reported that debris exited out of the South Chute. So in other words, the chute that was farthest away from where the guide entered the chute. But he said the first debris to come out came out of the South Chute. The second debris flow came out of the Middle Chute, and the third debris flow came out of the Northern Chute, or where the guide had entered. And witnesses, and these witnesses were the people that were, or the clients that were down the lowest on the counter slope, reported 3 to 5 meters of debris. I mean, it's a hell of a lot of debris if it actually was that much and not pulverized snow. Traveling, they estimated 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. So the fatality, the actual fatality occurred about 3 p.m. And interestingly enough, I mean, up to this point, we have had no reports of natural activity or skier-triggered activity. Around 3 o'clock, in the subsequent days, several people reported natural and human-triggered avalanches that occurred at that time. They came from various locations. And I had a National Avalanche School field session going on that day. And we had a student on belay, luckily, and she weighed, I don't know, maybe 90 or 100 pounds, and she triggered, she was standing up on top of the ridge and just sort of bouncing on a little pillow, and at 3:05 she triggered a large avalanche with 1.5 meter crown face on the east aspect of Titus Ridge. So it was the opposite aspect of where the guy triggered the slide, but not that far away. And it ran down to Titus Lake, which is, I don't know, 1,500 feet or so below there. So this is the hand-drawn pit that we did, or excuse me, a drawing of weather station graph from Titus Ridge, which is where the National Avalanche School avalanche occurred. And that was 9.5 kilometers northeast of the accident site. And you'll see on the day of the accident, there's 17 degrees C temperature spike right here. And so the overnight low was -12 C that day, or that night. That was the lowest since February 3rd. And the high was 5 C, 41 degrees, which was the highest since January 12th, so the highest in about a month. On February 3rd, the temp rose 16 degrees C from -23 to -7. So the following day, I flew in with some heli ski, and we looked at the site, and when we landed on the top of the ridge, and remember the day before, you know, they probably had skied 200 runs up there, counting both the east and the west side. We triggered, just by landing on the top of the ridge, where they had landed several times the day before, we triggered a large avalanche on the east side, which was opposite the fatality. We conducted one slope profile in the North Chute, right in there. And that's it, hand-drawn profile. And the profile showed 30 centimeters of moist snow, you know, because it warmed up, overlying about 75 centimeters or 75 centimeter dry slab, and it was about 1 degree Fahrenheit. The dry slab sheared easily on buried surface ore and near surface facets. And we didn't gather any other profiles, mainly because we were too scared to, so we left. And no stability tests, again, were conducted. Okay, on the way out, Sunbelt Heli dropped a couple of cast primers and triggered two, they're probably D2 plus, D3 size avalanches. So the high temps, you know, following the accident, the high temps remained around 7 to 8 degrees C from February 10th through the 16th, and that's when that large cycle continued. Okay, so this is what the original accident report concluded, that the rise in temperatures that began on February 3rd largest spike on the 10th may have increased creep in the slab, which may have increased stress on the buried surface soil layer. The guide appeared, we went back and tried to do a post-mortem on it. Where he entered the chute was definitely a shallow point. There's actually grass. You can see some grass sticking out of it. And he may have collapsed the snowpack and triggered a brittle fracture. Okay, so the general conclusions were that avalanche conditions existed, obviously, steep terrain, slab, weak layers, spatial variations. 3 centimeters of water that fell between the 4th and the 8th may have been a major factor. And intuitively, it seems like the warm temperatures must have had something to do with it. Prior tracks may have been a factor. And I sent all these conclusions to Hans Bugler, who, to my relief, concluded with all of them. I'll tell you how happy I was. But despite those general conclusions that we came to, in this seemingly, anecdotal evidence that warming especially had something to do with this avalanche, a paper in Squaw Valley this past fall, and talking to Carl, has really made me wonder. And the paper was one that Jörg Schweitzer and Bruce Jamison wrote, and just sort of the synopsis is, warming is believed to be one of the most prominent causes of snow instability, although experimental evidence is rare. But they go on to say, we know that due to the low thermal conductivity of snow, warming at the snow surface rarely affects the weak layer temperatures. In the case of dry snow avalanches, instability is not due to weakening of the weak layer, but it is believed to be due to increased deformation within snow surface layers of the slab, which would be in keeping with the guide triggering the slide. Solar radiation can penetrate the surface and effectively reduce the stiffness of the upper layers, changing slab properties that directly affect snow instability in many ways. And then I think, most importantly, whereas measurements have shown that snow layers, in fact, creep more rapidly due to warming, field evidence is mostly lacking on how these changes affect snow instability. This might be because the effects of snow warming are subtle and only observable under certain slab weak layer conditions. So, in other words, the effect of warming to 0 degrees C on loose snow avalanches, surface slides, is strong. Effect on dry snow slab release is subtle, according to their paper. Increased deformation increases the strain rate on the surface weak layer, increases skier stress at depth. Solar radiation is more efficient than warm air, which I think we've all experienced and know. Warm air temperatures at warming the surface areas or layers came up with, well, even before this fall, why the significant winds and snow, rapidly loaded slopes on January 27th triggered numerous large new snow avalanches for several days, but we don't think triggered any avalanches in the December weak layer, or in the surface soil layer. We had an inch of water that fell 4th through the 8th, you know, that's not all that much water. There weren't any natural or artificially triggered avalanches reported, and they may have occurred, you know, because the skiing was actually pretty good above 7,200 feet. Forecasters were out, others were out skiing, no reports of avalanches. The cycle began around 3 p.m. on February 10th. Why did the cycle begin when it did? It was almost like it was black and white, although I have to say, with that National Avalanche collapse, we got a huge collapse about 10 o'clock in that morning going up the ridge. So I think things were, it wasn't just like it, you know, suddenly went from stable to unstable. And why did it only affect thicker snowpacks? There were very few reports of avalanches in anything but these thicker snowpacks where the surface soil was buried quite deeply, at least by our standards. Was the snowpack verging on widespread instability and warming pushed it over the edge? I think it's a huge question. Did it meet Schweitzer and Jameson's contention that the effects of snow warming are subtle and only observable under certain conditions? And lastly, did the increased deformation of the slab at the point the guide entered the chute enable the fracture, which, if that's true, it certainly doesn't explain the 48-hour cycle that followed on both natural and skier-triggered slides. So, I think since all of us in here, you know, work with the public, I'm going to quickly go through how this affected community Ketchum. Just take a minute or two. And number one, a whole lot of people were shocked that 2 young guys were killed within sight of the parking lot, an area that was considered very benign by most of the community. And that this experienced backcountry guide could get killed. Citizen support, we were just getting the Avalanche Center up and rolling, and support for the Avalanche Center increased significantly, including we established a French group that year and raised probably 30 times more money than we had ever raised in the past, and it actually, you know, got the Avalanche Center up and going, or was one of the impetuses for it. Breastford classes went up. And I think it greatly affected the forecasters. We were a lot more cautious after that. During these conditions, I think, where we got these persistent weak layers that you know, appeared to last for days and days and days, and people would get impatient with us. All of you guys at forecast know that, and I think that concerned us, but nevertheless, we continued offering the same forecast. And the guides were extremely affected. Besides profound sadness, they struggled with, you know, remaining professional, remaining analytical, and going out and not letting this accident, you know, I guess, affect, although it did, affect the way they made decisions. You know, they still wouldn't make objective decisions. So this is Jim Otteson. He was the guy. And